confinement.
All right. Welcome to Locks and Bridges.
Oh, let me leave. Solitary confinement, recidivism, post incarceration syndrome, mental health, all things prison. These are some of the things Locks and Bridges will talk about. Nah, that don't sound right.
No, that was good. That was actually good. Hold on.
Perfect. When we
You hear?
get that
Hold
right,
on.
when we get the beat, then we need.
One.
Solitary confinement, recidivism, reentry, parole, mental health. These are some of the topics we'll cover in the weeks and months going forward on the Locks and Bridges podcast. My name is Jamala Taylor.
And I'm Akili Castle.
We're both formerly incarcerated. I am the CEO of Linear Consulting and Support Services.
I'm the co-founder and CEO of Breaking Chains Mending Minds.
I am formerly incarcerated. I served 31 years in California State Prison, including 15 in solitary confinement at Pelican Bay SHU.
And I am formerly incarcerated. I served 25 years in California state prisons and 17 years in solitary confinement, Pelican Bay State Prison.
This is our opening episode, so I guess this is a day of introductions.
Right.
I think I'll probably speak a little bit about Linear Consulting and Support Services. It's a company I started in my mind while incarcerated. The last 2 or 3 years of my incarceration, I was actually preparing myself to go to board and potentially, be released. I had 99 years to life, so prior to laws changing, and
99 years to life.
99 years to life. Prior to laws changing,
yeah,
I was never going to get out.
Right.
In say 2010, 2011, sometime around there, California laws changed to something called the Youth Offender Law, which allowed for anybody who committed their crime before age 26 to at least go before the board and make their case for rehabilitation. And it was applied retroactively.
And let's real quick, bro, let's tell them about why that exists. Because this is a big issue throughout the country, right? Juveniles are sentenced as adults. They're sentenced at 14, 12, 16 in some cases to life without the possibility of parole. They're sentenced, a 12-year-old sentenced as an adult, you know what I mean? And so what happens is when you get these life sentences, the cases, and I don't remember exactly the name of the case, I can check later, but the case went before the Supreme Court and they made the ruling and specifically said that a juvenile doesn't have the mental capacity to understand the consequences of the things they're doing as an adult would. So it's just totally unconstitutional and illegal to sentence them as adults when they don't have the mental capacity to understand the consequences of the actions they're taking or are involved in, or whatever the case may be, which just makes common sense. And it took them, what, 30 freaking years to do that?
And as you said, it's absolute common sense. It's like a juvenile cannot agree to have sex or buy alcohol or buy drugs. Even if they agree to it, the law does not see them.
Have their own bank account, drive till you reach a certain age. Exactly. The society is set up on those rites of passage, basically, right?
But we make exceptions for the criminal justice system. It's a lot like slavery. Slavery is illegal in the United States, except for prisons. For inside prisons.
Of a crime, right?
Absolutely.
Under the Constitution. Yeah, and I think an important point to cover in that too also, and I'm gonna let you get back to what you were saying, bro, because it's highly important, is the fact that these are sentencing guidelines and laws that were passed during the times of the war on drugs, the war on gangs, the war on poverty, quote unquote wars. And those wars were targeting disenfranchised communities, people of color, mostly Blacks, and Hispanics or the Latino community, Mexicans and so forth and so on. And that was the purpose, and when you think about it, it's just an assault on our family structure. It's an assault on our communities. You can go back to the biblical days and King Herod, or, kill all the firstborn male children. You can come up to the Black Power movement and think about J. Edgar Hoover and the whole thing that he never let another Black Messiah rise. So anyway, go back to what you were saying, bro. I just wanted to make sure people understood why that law came into effect.
So as a result of that law coming into effect for the first time, and at that point I'd been in for like 25, 26 years. For the first time I had a little hope. And
Right.
not much hope, because they play games with it. So
Right.
2018, I went to board for the first time. I was denied for 5 years. And really, that was the first time I actually believed I could actually be paroled in that denial. So I went and I put my head down and I got to the grind, and I took every class I could take. Eventually, I began teaching pretty
Okay,
much every class.
before you go there, bro, let me throw something in there, because I think this is an important point too. It needs to be mentioned, the fact that had you not been released from SHU, due to the fact that we had people who martyred themselves during our worldwide hunger strikes, right? Due to the fact that we had hunger strikes and we let the system know that, listen, man, if you're going to keep us like this, we might as well be dead and we're willing to die. Either shut it down or we're going to die back here. And them not wanting to have to carry the pressure of all those deaths really made them change the SHU criteria and sentencing and allowed us to get back to the main line. Because the reality was that we know personally, and I'm talking about having had personal experience with probably 30 guys who were in the SHU for 20, 30 years, people who were serving 7 to life sentences from back in the 70s, who were sitting in the SHU and couldn't get a date simply because they were in the SHU.
Yep. Without the hunger strikes, many of us would still be in prison. There's no question. And not only in California prisons, but remember, the hunger strike sparked a movement all over the country. It didn't just change solitary in California.
Right,
I remember those early days, Washington went up, Oregon went up, Texas went up, Arizona went up, Colorado went up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it absolutely sparked it.
But in the world, you had people all over the world. Juan Mendez from the UN came and spoke with our representatives, and these were prisoners, guys who were in prison, were speaking with people from the UN and United, it's just amazing. But I wanted to get that point in here, the fact that you would have never even had the opportunity to be considered for a 5-year denial had we not had those hunger strikes. Just to hit on the fact of how deleterious and how really, I really just want to say evil. I can't think of a better word, how evil that system is,
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Absolutely.
But I think that did ignite the entire movement that would eventually see me freed. And
you were going to say that you went back to the cell after that and you put your head down?
I went back to the cell after that. I put my head down. I started taking every self-help class, the prison offered. And, eventually I started teaching those classes. I got my GED. I enrolled in college, and I just really started focusing in on the potential to get out. So instead of waiting that 5 years, after 3, I put in a petition to advance. You can send a petition to the board. And if they feel like you made enough progress, they can cut it from 5 to 3. And that's what I did. In 2020, I went in, spoke my truth. They granted me parole. And here I am. And
but it's important to say that what you've created through Linear Consulting and Support Services, along with your sister, is the birth, and I think that's where you were going before I interrupted you, is a seed that was planted while you were pursuing your liberation.
It was absolutely born from that struggle. And I think that's the beauty in it. It was born from that struggle. And when you're in the midst of struggle, there's nothing fun about it. You can't, see necessarily the productivity. It's just about staying up late, studying, not having enough time in the day to do what you need to do, but having to see it through. And now
that light at the end of the tunnel, like a crack under a door, huh? It's hard to see.
We're reaping the benefit of it. Not only, myself as a business, but the people. We're able to not only provide a service that's needed, but change lives in a lot of senses. Give people the tools to save lives. And our first offering from Linear Consulting was board preparation. My last couple of years before I left, I would help other dudes getting ready to go to board prepare. And what a lot of people don't know, the board in California has its own language. They speak in very specific terms. And
Mhm.
you need to understand the language. You need to be able to speak in those terms. You need to be able to speak, period. Many of us didn't grow up identifying and then talking about our innermost personal feelings. I know I
Right,
didn't, and it was incredibly
right,
uncomfortable. But if I
right.
wanted to get out, I had to learn. I
Mhm.
mean, learning, I was able to teach. And when I got out, I took that, what I was doing in person, turned it into a correspondence course. And now I'm doing that with, through correspondence with people still on the inside. We have,
So,
go ahead, please.
no, I was gonna say, so you've created a whole curriculum that prepares guys. So you're not putting enough on that, bro. You being real demure and real humble about it. I appreciate that. But let's be real about this, man. You're a man who sat in torture, who was tortured in solitary confinement. We're talking about, like you were saying earlier. Matter of fact, if you would walk the people through the visualization you do about the shoe.
Um, I do a good deal of public speaking, and I always, ask the audience to close their eyes and visualize the things they passed on the way into the building: trees,
Mhm,
grass,
mhm,
leaves, sunshine. Now think about solitary confinement. You are intentionally deprived of all of those things.
mhm,
The mind that came up with it said, well, we'll make these cells without windows. This will limit their sunlight. It'll
mhm.
deaden their eyes over time. Um, it'll affect their balance. It'll affect their health.
No
Let's remove
vitamin.
their ability to see trees and grass. We'll have them exist in an unnatural state and see how long it takes to break them.
Human
Many of us,
contact.
one more time,
I said human contact. We're
human
social
contact.
creatures. We're not meant to survive without human contact,
Yes,
you know?
every bit of external stimuli that they could remove from our lives, they did so.
Even books, we used to get, people probably don't understand what this is, but we used to get written up, I'll say it that way. They call them 115 disciplinary reports in California, for having certain reading material, for studying, for trying to improve yourself. You were considered bucking the system. So it's just like you said earlier, it's just like slavery.
I
It's like,
can I can remember when the internet first came out and you couldn't get stuff from the internet.
right. Oh, remember
Internet
that? We
generation.
had to file in court on that.
And I remember having an issue with some magazines being sent in. So to file my grievance, I had to get a receipt from UPS. And by this time, they had just went computerized. So they'd send me the
Right.
receipt in, and staff would confiscate the receipt before it came to me, like, no, this is computer generated.
The games these people play, evil.
You couldn't get
Evil.
anything that came off a computer for many, many years.
Evil. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's crazy. I don't want to get too deep in that reminiscing right now. But let's tell the people. So what Linear Consultants, what you guys do is you guys provide, based on your experience and your expertise, a platform and a curriculum to prepare guys to go to the board and be successful.
That is absolutely one of the things we provide. But we also um, connect people with reentry resources. We consult on all things prisons, from consulting with attorneys, consulting with families, what
Mhm.
their loved ones are going through, or how they can access the things they're going to need to eventually fight the system and try to get their loved ones out. We're pretty full service with all things prison. We have a hand in pretty
Cracking
much
those locks and creating the bridges, huh?
moving into even advocacy, that part of it.
Mhm.
Everything we could do to ultimately close or minimize the use of prisons. In California,
Right.
prisons are way, way, way overused. They have laws that
Yeah.
support that. People get life for a little bit of nothing in this
Mhm.
state. All part of the prison industrial complex, and
Right.
we like to halt that. Nobody should be benefiting off prison, off other
Right.
people being imprisoned.
Right. Absolutely. Off of the destruction of whole communities.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like warmongering at its best, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
we're fielding Locks and Bridges as a joint venture between
Mhm.
Linear Consulting and Support Services, co-founded and led by myself, and Breaking Chains, Mending Minds, co-founding and led by my brother. I'll let him tell you a little bit about his group.
Okay. Well, with Breaking Chains, Mending Minds, our focus, and one of the focuses of what we're doing here with this live chat podcast is healing. I mean, if you look at the name of the podcast, it becomes pretty obvious why we chose that name. The lock showing the trauma, the pain that we've been through, not just you and I, but in general, as a community, as a people, and the bridge being the healing part. So Breaking Chains Bending Minds really came out of my struggle to re-enter society. I've been home now for 2 years and was recently released from parole in November with an early release, because one of the things that prison taught me, and maybe it just enhanced something that was already in me, because I don't care what anybody says, you go to prison and you awaken the best and the worst of yourself, right? And I say that because of our shoe experience. Those were some of the greatest times of my life because of the growth. You got to remember, I was in prison from the time I was 20. I turned 21 in the county jail and didn't get out of prison until I was 46, 47, right? So that was my whole maturation, matriculation there, right? That was me going from a man child to a young man to an adult to a, you know what I mean? So yeah, the struggle for me coming home was a bit. The first 6 months were wonderful. I immediately came home. I had something that most people don't have, and it's something we're going to talk about here on the podcast. I had a support system that knew how to get me a social security card before I come home. Set up the appointments for my driver's license and all of those documents you need to be a citizen out here, right? So that road was smooth and easy for me. I came home to, a lovely home, a fiance and all that stuff. So I was blessed in that way. So it would have been, and it should have been easy for me to transition back into society. However, it wasn't. It hasn't been, it's been 2 years and it hasn't been easy. It's been a real struggle. The first 6 months were beautiful. I had gone to a place called Detroit Training Center here where I'm at and learned and got licensed in asbestos, lead removal, mold, learned how to operate machinery and do a lot of things that I do in my career now. But after 6 months, I found that I hit a wall. And, in reflection, what I found is that wall was being built every day I was out here. Bricks were being added to that wall every single day I was out here. I just wasn't identifying or sharing or communicating about what was being built, And in retrospect, it's really similar to the wall I built in 1999 when I first landed in solitary confinement. My situation was a little bit different in the sense that I was supposed to have gone home in 1990. Well, I was supposed to go home in 2000 originally. In 1999, I caught a case due to the prison politics and the constant institutionalized racist system that exists, right, in there. I caught a case and ended up catching 20 more years. I was only doing 4 years, ended up catching another 20-year sentence and was sent to the SHU subsequent of that, right, as a result of that. So in 1999, I remember, and it's difficult to even talk about now. I remember that first walk. We took that long drive, took me on a special transport in a van, shackled from head to toe, 3 o'clock in the morning, they come and grab you out the cell and shackle you, and take you on this in the dark. And so we drove all the way up to Northern California from, I was actually in San Luis Obispo at the time, which is like the center of California. So we drove all the way up to to the Oregon border, and I'm shackled the whole time. But I remember entering this dungeon. This long, the door, you come in, they let you out in the shackles and stuff. You're standing there in front of the door and it opens like a huge warehouse, right? And then there's all these guards there, what we call the Goon Squad or SSU, in this full armored metal, with the batons out and the whole regalia, the military regalia. And I remember them walking me down the hall to where they were gonna do my orientation. And you mentioned this in your interview, but I guess it happens with all of us. But they made it quite clear that I was going to die there. Yep. At that point, I could either become a snitch, right, or I could just prepare myself to die here. Bottom line. So, but anyway, to deal with that process, I remember one of the first things I did after I got over the initial shock of being put in the cell and realized that, damn, this is it. If I don't find some way through the law to get out of prison, I'm literally gonna die here, right? In this little cell with no sunlight, no human contact, no humanity at all. So anyway, I remember having some real tearful, prayerful moments in that time. But I remember telling myself, specifically saying to myself, okay, to survive this, you got to cut off all your emotions. To survive this, you can't feel jack. You have to make yourself not remember and not feel, because that's the only way you're going to get through this. You have to become numb, completely numb. And I did that. You know, I had the joys and the instances that we shared with the brothers who were there, that we would meet or be able to see, you know, and even to talk to another brother. You did it under peril of getting another 6 years in solitary confinement, right? Anything we did, any communication we had was some form of rule breaking that could get us 6 more years in solitary. So everything was under the threat of death, you know. Yep. Everything, every movement was under the threat of death, meaning you could get 6 more years and be stuck in SHU for the rest of your life until you died. But I remember cutting off my emotions, and I remember having that very specific conversation. And in retrospect, that's what I've done, and that's what I was doing for those first 6 months I was home. I was numbing myself, or I was relying on that skill or that ability that I developed to survive solitary confinement out here in the world. Because the anxiety I was feeling, the depression I was feeling, bro, the fear I had, the uncertainty about how to hold a conversation with my supervisor at work, or, you know, thinking everybody knew I was in prison and how people would accept me. And I was keeping all that stuff inside. I didn't share that with anyone. And that caused me to go to a familiar place. And that familiar place was that mentality I had before I went to prison, you know?
Yep. Coping mechanism, coping skill.
That was the coping, that was it, right? And that coping skill was already one that was developed in traumatic situations. So that coping skill was one that wasn't useful. That was a coping skill of getting high, of, you know, running from my problems, of, you know, masking everything, of, you know, trying. So anyway, that coping skill led me into substance use. And this is since I've been home. Excuse me. That led me into, you know, some issues with substance use since I've been home. But what it did was, and this is why this live chat thing is so important. What it did, coming back around and out of it, just like the SHU, it opened me up to my true self, to my purpose, to my, you know, to actually using and acting on my potential and seeing clearly, okay, I went through that for a reason. And that reason was I learned about a thing called Post Incarceration Syndrome. And it's amazing to me that nobody really knows about it. Post Incarceration Syndrome is a mental health condition that consists of 5 maladies. There's substance use disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, antisocial personality trait, institutionalized personality trait, and social sensory deprivation, right? And these 5 mental health conditions all developed from the trauma and inhumanity of incarceration. So the bottom line is what we realize, and one of the things I think this chat is so important, and it's going to be so important, because what we're revealing is the fact that you're damaging people. You're putting people in life-threatening situations. You're destroying families. You remember when they created the Super SHU, the short corridor, they called that the suppression campaign.
Yep.
I have legal documents where I filed about them putting us in that place because they were violating my constitutional rights, our constitutional rights. And they literally, in these documents, tell the courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, I went all the way to the Ninth Circuit, they would tell the courts, listen, this is a suppression campaign. We call this the suppression campaign to cut off communication with these particular people and the outside world. That meant no mail, no lawyer visits, no, all of your rights were stripped. Those basic human rights that we maintain, even though we're prisoners, were totally stripped. So what this podcast, what this live chat will do, one of the many things it will do, and I'm so blessed to have you here to do it with me, bro, you know, is we're going to connect the dots. We're going to connect the inside to the outside. We're going to connect the preparing yourself and doing what you need to do on the inside to get out here, through what you do with linear consultants, you know, and we're going to prepare you to be out here through what we do with Breaking Chains, Mending Minds.
For
You know,
us, by us, about us.
About us, absolutely.
And the people need that. The people need that platform. They need that source of information.
And it's our responsibility, right? We survived that. We lived that. This is what our history teaches us, that all of the people we hold in reverence, all of our ancestors are people who picked up the mantle, you know, because this ain't nothing but neo-slavery. I don't care what anybody says. We were in slave-like conditions.
Yeah, without question.
There's no two ways. There's no two ways about it. So we're doing what we're historically mandated to do by the people who came before us, and that's we're picking up the mantle of our condition. We're telling you what it was like, what it was about, but we're also giving you the solution. And that solution.
And I believe it's unique. It's not just reliving the prison experience. It's certainly not. It's certainly not glorifying, you know, gang culture and prison culture and any of those things. It's remaining grounded in those things because they're a part of our history, but from a perspective of healing, of bringing people to a point where they're whole.
It's about transformation and redemption, really, right? I mean, that's really what this is about. You know, maybe we can, you know, let the people know we're the #1 live chat podcast for transforming and redeeming, right? That's really what this is about. That's really what this comes down to.
And the irony in all of this is we're taking the skills that we learned and were developed in the belly of the beast and using those very same skills to heal and help.
Yeah. I mean, we could really sit back and really go into long discussions about doing those little essays that we had to write when we read certain books and send down, you know, of course, illegally, send them down a tier on the fishing line to one of the older brothers, one of the elders, and have them critique it and that, you know, and these things taught us, they really taught us and prepared us. So of course, everything that, you know, that the evil does will be turned to good, right? And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, topics. Okay, hold on. Let's pause here.